Today's guest, guys, I am fired up for. We got another fellow East Coaster here coming out of Manhattan, and Craig and I connected, and I'm just blown away by what he's accomplishing right now. So I'm going to let him share his story, but right now he's the founder of Cultivate Lasting Symphony. He's a mindset coach, he's a speaker, and he's a performance enhancer. And Craig, you know what really caught my attention? It's so cool with what you're doing right now and the impact you're going to make. And it seems like you started off on Wall Street in such a different environment, right? And it seemed like you had so much success, and now your focus is transferred to impacting people and helping them perform on the next level. First of all, pumped to have you here, but I would love to get into a little bit of your background.
John, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate everything. I appreciate everything that you're going. You and I are cut from the same cloth. Your best is yet to come as well. And, it's funny. You touched on the Wall Street and all the success. I think you could probably relate to this. At the end of the day, money isn't everything, as we learn in life. In the beginning, we think it is, but if the pandemic taught us anything, it's how unpredictable life is. And you really have to dig deep and find what sets your soul on fire and then pursue it, make it your life. And then you wake up every single day excited. And that's what I was fortunate to do during this pandemic.
Yeah, man, it's been crazy. And I've noticed a lot of shifts happening, obviously. My opinion right now, with what's going on and being in the network marketing industry and everything like that, we've seen kind of the death of brick and mortar retail happening. And I feel like this has just accelerated so much of that, and everything's just so moving to online business. But let's get into a little bit of, like, I'm always interested that experience on Wall Street. I feel like being like in college, watching the Wolf of Wall Street, seeing like all of that stuff, you get all fired up and excited, and people think that's the path to go. But I've noticed so many people get burnt out quickly. Like, what was your experience like there?
It's funny. The movies, it's an interesting take on what actually goes on, but there's also some similarities, and not all of it is fabricated. When I first got to Wall Street out of college, I was a little bit of a fish out of water. I was in a boardroom with 200 veteran brokers. They were all crushing it, and I didn't have the confidence that obviously I have today as I speak to you. I was a little bit more of an introvert, and the reality is I didn't have experience. And it was back then when I started studying NLP and all the mindset tweaks, and I understood the concept of modeling and anchoring and how to rebuild your mindset and perspective. And as a result, I would say I became a grown man on Wall Street. And what I did was I established my confidence. And it was a lot of noise, a lot of, just like the movies, a lot of the limelight and the flashy stuff and the shiny new toys and all that. But the truth of the matter is what I learned, which is most significant, was a ton of experience, life experience. Wall Street has its ups, it has its downs. It's obviously very lucrative, but at the end of the day, it comes at a price, and it came with a ton of stress and anxiety and so forth. And, life is short. I want to make people happy. I want to spread light. I want to live a life that's full of fulfillment. And I didn't necessarily get burnt out, but after years on Wall Street and making a ton of money and building a very big book of business, it was time to pivot from there. And the reality is like I said earlier, it comes with stress. It comes with a ton of baggage, so to speak. And I was ready to remove those shackles and do something where you could take 5 steps forward and not 5 steps backwards. You don't have to worry about all the anxiety, the stuff that you can't control, the unpredictability of dealing with the stock market and so forth. And so some of the best times of my life, but at some point it was time to pivot from there. And then I left and went into a whole other industry and started a business from there.
It's so funny you say the unpredictability of the stock market and everything like that. Because remember in college, one of our ventures was we were trading these penny stocks. And
sure.
we at first, we hit it big. Like we made a ton of money and we think we're on top of the world. We know everything there is to know about the stock market. And then we're trading this one stock and it gets halted. And then it just opens up at a quarter of the price and just diminishes to nothing. And it was just like, it was a humbling moment. It made me realize a lot and how you really aren't in control there. But it just reminded me of that. But anyway, so you decide to step away from Wall Street and you went on to build 2 8-figure businesses. Let's talk a little bit about that. What did you build? Like, how was that transition?
It's a great question. So one of them was in finance, as I built a book of business that was, almost 9 figures, which was unbelievable. From there, when I left that industry, I started a new business in another industry where essentially we provided working capital to small to mid-sized businesses across the country. Since 2008, obviously, lending has become a lot more strict and so forth. And so small to mid-sized businesses all across the country, sometimes it's difficult for them to get loans and so forth, stuff of that nature. I was able to provide them, you know, a little bit more riskier businesses with capital. And it was very lucrative. I built the business within a couple of years. It was, you know, we were lending at over 100 million, which is nice. It was very lucrative. It was a ton of fun. It was challenging because it was something new to me. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to be straight up with you, John. I never sugarcoat it. I wasn't waking up on fire for it. I didn't have that passion for it. And as a result, at that time, I started channeling all this built up energy that I had. And I kind of started running. And, you know, I was a weightlifter and so forth. That was always my thing. That's where the magic happened for me. Fitness is a big part of my life. But I started channeling this built up energy that I had kind of from, it started in Wall Street. It was time to pivot. Like you said earlier, it's too unpredictable and so forth. I didn't have it for the new business, although I was making a ton of money. So I went from not being able to run a mile. I have a very addictive personality. I ended up conquering 4 marathons that very next year. And I knew I wasn't going to become a professional runner. That wasn't the thought process. The thought process was I needed an outlet. I had all this energy, all this desire. And so from there, obviously the pandemic ended up happening. And that's when, I know this is going to sound a little spiritual, but you know, it was the first time in over a decade where I had a minute to just pause, speak to God, and kind of get the stars to align. And for me, the writing was always on the wall, John. I always had an unparalleled ability to communicate with people. People would always come to me for advice, for inspiration. I would always motivate people. Self-help, reading, sharpening the axe, journaling, all that stuff was always a big part of me. But when the pandemic happened, it was like, of course, we need to make this our life and help people on a much grander scale. And so from there, I hit the ground running. I started Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which is essentially a play on my initial CLS. And, you know, when you start an online business, I'm sure you can relate to this. In the beginning, just like Wall Street, it's unpredictable. You don't know what to expect. You don't know if people will resonate with your message. Who are you, so to speak? You get this imposter syndrome. The reality is I started putting out some content, and I launched my program, the Moonshot Masterpiece Experience, take on some clients to revamp their mindset. And it sold out the first day. And then I ended up selling out back-to-back programs. And I was so humbled that of all the people out there that do similar stuff, that people gravitated towards my message. And so what I did is I took all the entrepreneurial spirit that I had by building the other 2 big businesses on Wall Street with the working capital and stuff of that nature. And I applied that to my creativity and ability to help people. And then I launched CLS, and that's what brought you and I here today together.
So awesome, man. I love that. So I would love to know, and we did a class on this last night. It was about personal branding, but what I find really holds entrepreneurs and people back from taking action on their business are they're afraid, and typically they're afraid of other people's opinions. They're afraid of failing. They're afraid of, there's that imposter syndrome. So obviously you had success before you launched your coaching business, but what were people kind of like, what was that transition like? Because I'm sure people had their words to say to you, you know, about going from finance industry typically to coaching people. Like, what was that transition like?
You know, it's interesting. It happened very fast. I still have my business with the working capital, and I have a partner there, but it didn't set my soul on fire, like I said. And when I had a minute to really think about this in the pandemic, because it was the first time that life kind of stood still for a second. You couldn't go to work. There wasn't much activity. When I figured it out, I put together a plan 2 years out. This is where I'm going to be. I want to be the absolute top of the top king of personal development, bigger than Tony Robbins and so forth. Not for me, just because I felt like this is my purpose, to help people on a grander scale. And from there, I worked backwards. I said, well, how do we get there? Who's going to want to listen to me? And then I realized, you know, I am my own testimonial. I did start 2 businesses from the ground up, turned them into 8, 9-figure juggernauts with no prior experience. I did go from not being able to run a mile to run 4 marathons the very next year. Once I had that realization and confidence that, look, I'm not just some random guy who's not practicing what he preached. I did these things. Literally from there, I was on a run one day. I thought of my name, Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which essentially means to grab that edge in life that lasts forever. You know, that mindset revamp, as you would say, level up, but permanently. And then I started it. I started putting out some content, I didn't even really speak to anybody about it for them to say, you know, it's not going to work, or to even listen to negativity or haters. I went with it. I ran. I went all in. I burned the ships, as they say. There was no retreat. Once you find what sets your soul on fire, John, and for the audience that's listening, if you're fortunate enough to find what you absolutely love, you go all in and you make it work. And so that's exactly what I did. And I just blocked out all the other noise. People started resonating with the message right away. It even humbled me to an extent because I didn't know what to expect. But once I got over, you know, that weak moment for a second of imposter syndrome and realized that I am my own testimonial, I went for it, and the rest was history.
That's so awesome, man. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I think when you take a look, a lot of people are comparing themselves. Like, it's easy. You want to start doing something like coaching or some type of anything in that field. And then you look at like Tony Robbins, and that's like immediately
Sure.
they're like, oh, I'm not Tony Robbins yet. But I don't think people understand that you don't need to be 40, 50 years in your career before you can help someone. Like, you could be at a third grade level and help someone at a kindergarten level or a first grade level. And there's always people you can serve. So with your coaching, I'm interested to know, like, where do you start with people? Like, when you're working with people and you're helping them transform, what is level one?
You know, it's a great question, my friend. I don't want to give up too many secrets, but I will say this. My moonshot masterpiece experience. That's what it is. It's an experience, not a program. You know, we start the first couple weeks, we start with structure and accountability. This way, the wind is at your back right away. You have a game plan. You're not waking up every day going rogue and just freestyling. Put together a routine for you. Most importantly, from there, we start rebuilding your mindset, because here's the deal, and I'm sure you know this better than anybody. You could have the best idea in the world, but if your mindset isn't tough as nails, if your mindset isn't where it needs to be, any type of turbulence or obstacles that come your way, you're most likely going to crumble or fail or be intimidated. So we revamp the client's mindsets. We work on techniques such as modeling and anchoring, and how to embody, you know, this new persona. I like to say the 2.0 version of yourself. And by acquiring these mindset hacks and tweaks, you start to rebuild your DNA, because I'm a big believer in that people are not broken, but their frames often are corrupted and warped. Either we've been conditioned to be a certain way for a certain time, or you've been surrounded by a ton of negativity, whatever the case may be. Once you start to rebuild someone's map of the world, when they once saw limitations, now they see possibilities and opportunities. But it's very deep. You really have to rebuild someone's perspective on what they see possible for themselves. And once we're able to establish that in the beginning of the experience or program, then from there we start putting together strategies and we conquer our moonshots and dreams.
I love that. And I totally agree with you. I feel like it is really an unlearning process, because I don't know what your take on traditional school or the school system is, but obviously my
I know
book,
what yours is.
yeah, you know where I stand. And I don't even, I'm not like the type of person to preach like school's out, don't go to school, because I think there are benefits and there's a certain place for it. But we are conditioned the whole time to become perfect employees. We are conditioned to go follow structure and chase security and be cogs in a system. That's kind of what we're being manufactured for. And I think especially with entrepreneurship in the beginning, there's such a long, there's such an unlearning process that you must go through, because now it's like, now we're encouraging dreaming and shooting after huge goals and going out there and going against the grain and like sticking out instead of conforming. So I love what you're saying. Like, it's not that people are broken, but you have some unlearning to do.
Absolutely. Everyone's conditioned a certain way. And, you know, to an extent, it's not people's fault, right? It's society, it's the
Mm-hmm.
educational system, like you just mentioned. We're taught that we're supposed to do things a certain way, but pioneers, guys like you, who step out of the box and step out of their comfort zone and do things a little bit unorthodox, you know, we're the game changers. We're the people that can show people a different light, a different perspective. And sometimes, or a lot of the times, in my opinion, unorthodox and getting a little weird, if you will, is what's most effective. And I agree 100% with your philosophy in regards to the traditional route doesn't necessarily mean it's the best.
100%. This is a little offbeat, but like, what was your childhood like? Like growing up, like, were you always ambitious, like the type of person that was like, I'm gonna go and like do these big things in the world? Like, what was your upbringing like?
It's a great question. You know, I always had a hunger. I was always had that hustler mentality, so to speak. I was always a hard worker. But I'll be straight up with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. After I graduated college, I was a little bit lost in the wilderness with no compass. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't like I had a set plan. When I landed on Wall Street after college, like I said earlier in the conversation, that's kind of when I grew up and really started to hone all my skills and my mindset tweaks and really find my ambition. I always wanted to do something special. I knew I wasn't ordinary, but it took me a little bit. I was a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of actually putting it all together. But to answer your question in a nutshell, I did always have a fire. I always had curiosity. I always had that drive for sure.
Yeah, it's funny because when I share, I feel like, and I know a topic you speak on is how failures can help you become more successful, right? And for me, it was like, it wasn't until I was kicked out of high school at age 14 that I think I first developed that fire and that hunger for success. And at first it was like a chip on my shoulder, right? I wanted to prove everyone wrong and that I had what it took to go out there and succeed. But I'm a firm believer that there's so much advantage in adversity. Like oftentimes it's the people who come from the roughest backgrounds and been through the most shit in their life that rise up and have the biggest results because they're hardened. They have that hunger. So let's speak on that a little bit, like how those failures and how those adversities, like how you can harness those and use them to your advantage.
I couldn't agree more with you. Nowadays I'm at a point in my life where if I see an obstacle, instead of feeling some type of way, maybe anxiety or whatever the case may be, I immediately get excited because I know, just like you just said, obstacles present opportunity. It presents a chance to get creative, to go through the obstacle or around it, whatever the case may be. I've failed numerous times on Wall Street. I had a ton of success, but like I said earlier, it came with so much stress and unpredictability. Not exactly the same situation that you said earlier about, the penny stocks or whatnot, but stuff of that nature where there's stuff that's out of your control. And it kind of sucks, for a lack of better words, because here, you bust your ass, you have the work ethic and you're trying to do the right thing. Sometimes it could blow up in your face when you can't really control the outcome. And there were times on Wall Street where I was like, is this really my path? Is this what I'm supposed to do? I was a little bit down. I wouldn't necessarily say depressed, but, I was second guessing myself. And then eventually I came around. I did what I had to do there, and it was time to pivot. And, I could have easily been dejected. I could have stayed the course, but I realized, not my success on Wall Street didn't go up in a straight line. It was like this, like every entrepreneur is, up and down. And I used those failures to get battle tested, to realize that every time I fall down, it's an opportunity to rise, but not just rise. Now I have experience. Now I have education, real life education, not something you can learn in social studies in class, stuff that you have to go through, grit, determination. So I failed, and it just kept shaping me until I would eventually become the Craig 2.0 persona that you speak to here today. And even when I started the new business after that, in the beginning, it takes a little bit while to start building up a client base and so forth. It wasn't just like I hit the ground running. It did happen pretty quickly because I worked very hard. But anytime you start a new business, it could be a little bit humbling. And so I learned from those experiences. I channeled that to running. I'm very ambitious. When I started running these marathons, I wanted to break the 4-hour barrier. That's like a thing in running. If you could break 4 hours in a marathon, that's pretty impressive. I didn't do it the first 2 times. I didn't do it. The third time, I broke it in San Francisco, and then last November in Philly in the rain, I shattered it. So, I don't shy away from failure. I embrace it. I look forward to it. I get excited about it. And I think, like you said earlier, anybody who hasn't had to deal with failure or obstacles in their life, how do they really know what they're made of until you have no choice but to dust yourself off, pick yourself back up, learn, grow, and so forth. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Obstacles and failure is basically a prerequisite, and it's necessary to get to that next level and level up to achieve even more success.
I totally agree with you. Are you a David Goggins fan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Who isn't?
Well, I was just like, you're out here, like, it just seems like you're like the perfect, like, in alignment with what David Goggins is all about, like toughening the mindset. He's out here running. I love his videos. He's out here.
Likewise.
But what I was going to say is it equates, like, the failure, it equates to kind of like how people who win the lottery, they're not a wealthy identity individual. They might have gotten that money, but their identity is far from where it is of a true wealthy individual. And I feel this similar about failures and those obstacles and what you go through is it builds your identity up to that level where that when that success comes and those results come, you're actually the person you need to be to sustain them. That's kind of my
Absolutely.
philosophy on that. So let's talk on, so you move into coaching and you have your courses, right? Or your program you launch and you immediately sold out on that. What is some advice you have for people who are launching a program or like just gearing up to launch their business and bring it to the public?
That's a great question. And I understand that most online business, and I say this with all due respect, as humble as I possibly can, I've been told it doesn't usually happen the way it worked out for me with CLS. Usually you try to get a client, it's not so easy. You go a little while, you fail, you reboot, you kind of rebrand yourself, you try a different route and so forth. What worked for me, John, and my biggest suggestion to anybody starting an online business is forget the formula. Be 100% authentic, real, raw, be you, because you do have a story to tell. And people are going to know if it doesn't come across as sincere. If you're posting stuff because you think it's Monday, I have to post a quote. It's Tuesday, I have to post it. It's going to come across as fabricated, as filtered, so to speak. You need to tell your story. What makes you unique? What makes you special? And you'll know very early on in the process if people resonate to your message or they don't. The reality is I am a little weird. I am a little unconventional. I don't shy away from that. It is what it is. Take it or leave it, so to speak. The most important thing that I can do is never going to be about Craig. I understand that now. I have a mission, I have a purpose. It's about helping people and putting together content where someone can watch one of my videos. Not only do they get inspired, that's great, but inspiration is temporary, but they could take value from the video or the quote or the caption, whatever, and apply it to something in their life, and they can immediately be elevated and benefit from that. And so what I would say is this: make sure you're authentic, make sure you're being true to who you are, and make sure that you provide value.
The authenticity piece is huge. And I struggled putting myself out there on social media for, I would say it took years. And I don't even think I'm totally 100% dialed in yet. I think we can always get better. I think I've come a very long way, but in the beginning, it was like watching what other people in my space, in my industry were doing and feeling like you need to replicate that and do what they're doing because it's working for them. And what you're going to find is if you try to copy what other people are doing, you're going to get even worse of a response. Like you need to find that authentic voice, what you are about and who you are. I guess this is a perfect segue into what I wanted to ask you next. So I know for you, your passion for coaching and helping people and helping them perform on a new level, you said you kind of had a spiritual moment, right, during COVID. What are some strategies or tips you can give to people to uncover their passion? Because I feel like so many people are just going through the motions and doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. And they don't even know like what it is ultimately they want to do. They don't even know what that passion is. What advice do you have for those people?
It's a very important question, my friend. And you're absolutely right. Far too many people are going through the motions. They're waking up every day into a routine. They're not happy. And we all do need to find our purpose, find our passion, what sets our soul on fire. It's not easy, right? I know a lot of people that are trying to find their passion. They actually want to, but they're having trouble identifying it and locating it. And so one of the things that I teach in my Moonshot Masterpiece experience is this. Once we get the mindset going, we get the modeling anchored, and we start to rebuild our perspective and what we see possible, I do an exercise in which you may be familiar, I'm not sure. I remix it a little bit, have a different flair on it. Essentially, you put together your biggest and wildest dream, your biggest moonshot, that if you could accomplish it from a dreamer's perspective, what would it be? Think as big as you want, get weird, have fun with it. Then we have two other perspectives. You could put 3 chairs in a circle. So that's the dreamer's perspective, your biggest vision, your biggest moonshot. Then you go into the other chair and you pretend to be the critic. And essentially you shred yourself. You say, well, this isn't going to work, John, Craig, because you're an imposter. You haven't done this. No one's going to listen to you. No one's going to like your content, whatever the case may be. You start to shred yourself as the critic. You step into the third and last seat, and then you say, okay, the dreamer wanted to do this. The critic said it's not going to work because of this. How do we find solutions to these potential obstacles? And then we make it work, and then we put together the actual strategy. It's a very deep and unique exercise. And essentially what it does is It allows you to get weird, to think big, think of through your wildest imagination on what you would like to do in a perfect world, and then come in and criticize yourself. And then as the realist, last but not least, you say, I understand why it won't work because of this. Maybe we could try this. And you put together the strategy. And it's been a very effective, flawless system for helping people identify and pursue their passion.
I love that, man. That's awesome. Are you familiar? Do you dig into Seth Godin's work at all? Specifically the book Lynchpin. Have you read that one?
No, I have not.
He talks about this concept of the lizard brain. It's the amygdala, like the most ancient part of our brain, and how its sole function is basically fight or flight. It's like seek pleasure, avoid pain. And that is just kind of the part of us that is that limiting voice. Like how you said, you have them sit them down and tear it apart. Like you have these big goals and big dreams and big ideas, and then that voice kicks in. And it's like,
Yep.
It's like, who are you to think you can do that, man? You grew up in a town in a high school with 90 kids you graduated with. Like you're like, who are you to think you can go out there and accomplish those things? And that voice, it just pecks at you. But I love that concept. And I love kind of making people shred themselves. That's an interesting way to go about it.
And I always tell my clients, pull no punches, get vicious, really put together all the criticism possible so that when you do step into the realist seat, you can actually take the dreamers and the critics' perspectives and then figure out what's actually going to work. But the best part about this exercise, John, is it gets the creative juices going. It helps you identify what you really are destined to do. And I think that's most people's biggest challenge, is actually locating what they even want to do.
100%. So how was like you formulating your coaching process? You don't need to like tell us why you did everything you did, but like what was like the process for you getting your structure together to coach your clients?
So for me, it's simple. When I was coming up on Wall Street, I didn't have experience. I didn't have a ton of confidence. And it was at that time that I started really digging deep and studying and working with an NLP practitioner and understanding just how powerful the mind is and how it's your best weapon, right? That you're going to war with. It's the biggest thing that you can do is revamp your mindset in a positive way. Because like I said several times in the conversation, when your mindset is right, there's nothing that you can't achieve. So once I was able to teach myself a lot of these tweaks, in addition to my mindset coach, and cultivate a more experienced, a more advanced, a more effective Craig on Wall Street, that's what I found out what works for me. And I've done this when I started the second business. I used these same tweaks and mindset hacks when I ran marathons. I'll be straight up with you. I'm not the most athletic cat out there. I mean, I can go, but like, I wasn't a professional athlete by any means. I believe, the marathons that I ran and the fast times that I recently ran weren't because of my physicality, but it was because of my mindset. And so I know what works for me, and I'm able to teach it in a compelling way where people, number one, accept and they want to learn from it, but they can apply it. So the answer to your question is I know what worked for me and what transformed me as a human being and my entire mindset. And I was able to put that into a flawless system. And that's the Moonshot Masterpiece experience.
I think that's an awesome answer because you did it. You went through it. You lived it. You experienced it. You took what actually worked for experience, and that's what you're applying. I think too many people, especially coaches out there right now, are strictly theory. They read a book that someone else did and they just take that and apply it and repackage it. But when you actually experience something, and that's a big theme of my book, how experience is one of the best teachers in life, if not the best. Like, because you think about it, you don't really learn a lesson, I don't think, until you experience it. You can have people tell you over and over and you can understand it, but until you feel that pain of that failure or whatever it is, you don't actually internalize it, I don't feel like.
You know what? I'm not sure if everyone would agree with that, but I definitely do. And it's so easy to get advice from people who have made mistakes or been through this, went through that. But similar to you, I'm the same way. Me personally, I need to go through it. I need to feel those feels. I need to feel the emotion, the heartbreaks, whatever the case may be, so that I can really cultivate, what's necessary to move forward. Listen, I wish it wasn't like that, right? I wish you could read a great book, learn, and then go. But similar to you, I'm a big experience type of guy. I like to go through stuff, figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's like a advantage, right? Or anything like that, or anything to be proud of that you need to go like feel it for yourself. I wish people could be like, hey, don't do this. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like growing up, it's like my sister, I remember she was like 14 years old, took my car and drove it. And it's like, she came back and we're like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have a license. You're 14. You don't even ever driven a car before. She couldn't figure out how to put it in reverse. So she ended up like driving in a circle to get out of where she was. But it's like telling them you can't take a car. It's like she has to probably get in an accident for her to like figure out that that's not reasonable to do at all. But yeah, it's that whole, I don't think it's an advantage.
So true.
But
It's
I don't
so
think
true.
it's an advantage.
It's great to actually hear you say that, because I don't know if I've ever had this type of conversation with somebody. It's nice that you can relate, and I think we're definitely cut from the same cloth. And you're right. Sometimes even if it's a worst case scenario, you have to go through it. You have to eat it until you can grow from it and move forward.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think from just talking to you right now, it seems like one of the bigger obstacles you've overcome as an individual is gaining confidence, right? And I think that like confidence is everything. When I'm coaching people in network marketing, I'm like, your belief has to be a 10 out of 10 in the company, in the products, in the network marketing industry. And then the one people struggle with is themselves within the network marketing industry. They need to believe 10 out of 10 that they can make it happen before they can grow their team or they can get anyone to join them. And I think that stems back to confidence. And I think that's where people are lacking. And so like, what are some ways that you were able to build that confidence in yourself?
It's a great question. So one of the techniques that I teach in my program is the technique of modeling, which is, a big mindset tweak, essentially, where you find someone that you hold in high regard, someone that you totally respect, somebody that you think very highly of, and you begin to model some of their attributes. This isn't copying them. It's just embodying some of the attributes that you respect from them and letting it rub off on you. And, this is kind of a funny story, but I don't shy away from it. On Wall Street, modeling was a big reason for a ton of my success early on, because when I didn't have all that confidence straight out of college, and I was a little intimidated by being around 220-year veteran brokers, I began to understand the process of modeling. And I began to model one of my personal favorites, James Bond 007. And it sounds a little goofy, and I'll be the first to say it is. But you know what? I did it on a very deep level. I started to embody the way he talks, the way he walks, the confidence that guy exudes. And out of nowhere, people are like, what's different about this kid? I didn't care. Like I wasn't shying away from objections. I walked with a swagger. I had an edge, and I just didn't let small stuff bother me anymore, such as, I'm nervous what these people are going to think about me, because I know James Bond wouldn't give a shit what other people think about him. And I started to use this, and then I started to grow and evolve. And obviously I became Craig 2.0, but some of the attributes that I modeled from a hero like James Bond stuck with me to this day. And listen, the world is a playground. People have done stuff. People have had success. It's in your best advantage to utilize what works and what doesn't. If you see other people out there that have had success in different areas, what's different about them? What kind of confidence do they have? And start to embody that. It's a great way to display a level of confidence that you necessarily didn't have before that.
That's a very interesting answer, because I'm all about role modeling, and I think it's very mature to be able to look at somebody and be like, look, I might not align with or even agree with all of this person's traits or think they're all good. But for example, like a couple of my role models, Alexander the Great, simply for leadership. Like maybe you don't have to agree with like all of the killing and everything he did was good, but think of him purely as a leader. Like
Sure.
Floyd Mayweather is one of my role models because of his championship mentality. Like you might not like what he does outside of the boxing ring or how he acts as an individual, but he's undefeated in boxing in his entire career. Like that's near impossible to do. Kanye West, visionary, that one trait from him, the visionary. I think he's one of our time's most greatest visionaries. And it's like taking those individual traits from people. You don't have to like everything about them, but people have their superpowers, and being able to role model in that way. What do you think about that?
I agree with you 100%. And some of the people that you just named, ironically enough, are people that mean a great deal to me as well. And it's true. You don't have to like everything about someone, but if they do something very well that you like to emulate, take it from them. Floyd Mayweather, for example, obviously a very controversial cat, but the reality is, if you're just talking about his craft, which is boxing as a science, as a skill set, I think he's unparalleled in his preparation and stuff of that nature. And Alexander the Great, I don't know everything about his story, but I do know he was a hell of a leader. And to, use that to your advantage and embody that, that's absolutely an advantage. And I agree with you. You don't have to like everything about every single person, but use the world as your playground. Get a little bit from different people, and then cultivate this persona to you by sprinkling onto you a little bit from all these different grades. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I utilize it myself.
I love that. I've never heard anyone say it for confidence. I love that you're walking around just feeling like James Bond. I feel like that's pretty badass, man. That's awesome. What was I just going to ask you? So coming to like embodying the whole confidence thing. Are you someone who encourages people to do things like I am statements and like speak things? Like I know a lot of coaches will be like, create your I am statements and like say them, look in the mirror, say them. Are you someone who gets behind stuff like that?
Not exactly per se, but I have techniques that dabble with that. For example, anchoring. So becoming the 2.0 version of yourself, which is essentially the best version of you that ever existed, the most badass version of you ever. Being able to have that vision and then anchor it so you can elevate your state and you could step into that. I think that's similar to what you're talking about. Not necessarily the same, like in terms of mantras, wake up every single day and say, I am this. But I do think that there's definitely some parallels and similarities between what I do and what you just mentioned.
Yeah, 100%. So let me ask you this, and now that you've really transitioned into this coaching and impacting and helping people become, like you said, that 2.0, that best version, what does success mean to you on that route in this part of your life? Like how do you define success in terms of what you're doing? Like what will you feel like at what level will you feel you succeeded in what you're doing right now?
For me personally,
Mm-hmm.
it's an awesome question. So for me, it's not about the money. It's not about being noticed, although those two things have come, and I'm very grateful with the CLS journey. But for me, the way I measure success is by continuously every single day serving and reaching more people and helping more people elevate and alter their mindset and enhance their life. The coaching calls are great. My clients are on fire. They're doing their thing. They're rebuilding themselves. But to be able to do this on a much larger scale, and I think big, very big, it's almost weird, but there is no ceiling on what we can accomplish here. And like I said earlier, the movement has grown at such a rapid rate. I'm so grateful for it. So, if somebody offered me $100 million to go on a speaking tour so that I can, sell out stadiums of 100,000 plus to do motivational sessions and alter people's mindsets, why would that be significant? Not for the money, because what it would be is it would allow me on a bigger platform to reach more people. The answer to your question is as follows. The way I measure success is by helping more and more and more and more people elevate their mindset, understand what's possible for them, and fulfill their destiny. That's what does it for me. That's what lights my fire. And obviously, I'm not mad at making money. It's a beautiful thing. But what making money does for me now is you need money to be able to put money back out there, to afford more luxuries in this whole situation, such as put yourself out there, reach more people with PR, whatever the case may be. So I want to touch more lives. I want people to fulfill their destinies. And I want people to understand that the ending of their story has not been written yet. And if we could help people understand that and make progress and grow and evolve, that's what it's all about for me, John.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I don't know if you've listened to The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, but he says in
One of my
there,
personal favorites.
so last month, we did this 30-day transformation challenge. It was really dialed into the power of thought. We listened to that tape every single day for 30 days. He says success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And it's, you make up in your mind, you set that target, that goal where you want to go, and you're already a success the moment that you decide, because people don't know where they're going, right? People are going through life with no target, but it's like, it doesn't matter what that target is. Once it's set and once you're aiming for that target and you're going after it, you're already a success. And I think people need to understand that when you make that decision, like before it's in your physical existence, you're already successful if you're shooting for that target.
100%. And, I find this very interesting how similar you and I are. For me, preparation breeds confidence. I did my homework on you. I wanted to see what we were getting ourselves in for. But speaking to you and the similarities that we have, even the people that you mentioned earlier on, people that you found to be, models and stuff of that nature, and also the Earl Nightingales of the world, and just different things that you say. We're cut from the same cloth, and it's rare. Earl Nightingale is one of my favorites. And when I was coming up on Wall Street, I'm a big sharpening the axe type of guy. What I mean by that is I'm always studying, working, journaling, getting bits of inspiration from different pieces. I must have listened to Earl Nightingale's The Strangest Secret 500 days in a row before I went to bed. I'm telling you, I would put it on every single night before I went to bed when I was coming up on Wall Street. It just resonates to me. It hits home. His voice is also soothing too, but that's neither here nor there. But I agree with you 100%. Once you identify what it is that you're searching for, now you have that target. Now it's only a matter of time before you hit it.
Yeah, it's not if, it's when. And that's funny, man. It was just, so we had this group and we're listening to him every single day. We're like sending voice memos, like mimicking his voice back and forth to each other. It's like, bro, it's like we listen to music, and not even without even trying, you can repeat the lyrics back. It's like, why aren't we doing that with things that are going to tune our mind into achieving what we want and what we're going after, like the Earl Nightingale tape? It's just like, we need to make these tweaks as a society.
100%. Absolutely, buddy. We're on the same page.
Yeah, I love it. And I do see these similarities. So as we approach the end here, I would love to ask you, and I think we probably touched on it. Typically by the end, we've touched on what the answer to this question is. But my book, Everything I'm Preaching, and a big passion of mine is how the most important lessons we learn come from outside of traditional school. So for you, if you had to pick one thing, what do you think the most important lesson that you've learned has been that's helped you succeed that came from outside of traditional school?
I think that when you go to traditional school, you have a major and you're supposed to do a certain thing a certain way. What I would suggest to the audience that can, in my personal opinion, get the most value out of their life is find the absolute thing that you love in life. I don't care what it is. The thing that sets your soul on fire, the thing that you get butterflies, the thing that really excites you. Find the thing you love and then make it your life. When you find it, you locate it, you identify it, you'll put together the proper strategy, you'll stop at nothing and you'll make it happen. And then from there, and I'm living testament to this, you'll never wake up in a lowered state ever again. Because here's the thing, when you wake up every day on fire, you're excited about the next day. You want to do a triple backflip into a split out of bed. You can't wait for further developments. You can't wait to collaborate with juggernauts like you. Everything is just so exciting, and it makes the journey, which is, life is a journey. It just makes it so much more fun and so much more meaningful. And so the short answer is agreed with you. Traditional schooling is going to put you down one way, one route. What I suggest is take a minute, take a step back and find what you absolutely love and what sets your soul on fire, and then figure out how to make that your life. And you'll live a life full of opportunity, abundance, blessings, most importantly, happiness and fulfillment.
Boom. Love it, man. That's on point. So, Craig, first of all, I want to thank you, man, for hopping on today. And I'm very happy we crossed paths. I know we're probably going to end up linking up in the city, and this is just the beginning of something awesome. I see so many ways we can collaborate and work together and make an impact in the future. Where can the people that are listening right now connect with you, learn more about your program? Where's the best place for them to go?
So I'd say where I hang out the most is on Instagram at Craig Siegel _CLS, the YouTube channel, Craig Siegel. I have a website, cultivatelasting.com, and I just launched my podcast, The CLS Experience, because that's exactly what it is, an experience. Season 1 dropping in December.
Like we said, man, the only way to learn is from experience. Best way to learn. I love it. That podcast is going to be awesome. So I'll put this information down in the show notes for anyone listening. And if you are listening and you were positively impacted by Craig's message today, if you got some value, all we ask for this show to spread the message, just share it with a friend or a family member or someone who needs or could benefit from Craig's message to level up in life. But again, Craig, thank you, man. I'm pumped that we linked. I'm pumped that we did this. And this is just a start, man.
Johnny, I couldn't agree more. And I want to thank you because, you're making a difference in this world, and you're somebody who decided, to do something a little bit different than the status quo. You went your own route. You figured out what worked for you, and you are inspiring people. You're inspiring me. and your best is definitely yet to come. Keep doing your thing, keep getting creative, keep trying new things. And like we said earlier, you and I have to go through experiences, but keep doing it. Don't shy away from it. You're on fire. And I can tell you right now, without a shadow of a doubt, you are destined for greatness, John.
I appreciate you, brother. I truly do. And for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in today. We will catch you on the next episode. Later, everybody.